Welcome once again to another in this series of podcasts hosted by the Office of Public Procurement Policy, in which we seek to further and expand and deepen the dialogue that started in our recently concluded 2024 Public Procurement Conference. We have decided that one of the issues that we think our practitioners could really benefit from is on the whole matter of ethics and fair play in public procurement proceedings. We have here with us this morning to discuss one of those sensitive topics that impacts local procurement affairs and also national business affairs. That is Mr. David Miller, the Executive Director of the Jamaica Fair Trading Commission. Mr. Miller, welcome this morning.
Thank you very much, sir.
Mr. Miller, please, for those who may have forgotten, can you just please tell the audience why you are best suited and competent to speak on the issue of ethics and fair play in just about Jamaica's business and procurement space?
Well, firstly, the Jamaica Fair Trading Commission is Jamaica's competition law authority. It was created under the Fair Competition Act over 30 years ago. And the law was established to monitor market behavior, to look at the interplay between firms in every market in Jamaica, well, almost every market in Jamaica. And over time, we have developed the skills, the techniques, the ability to investigate and speak on matters that affect the economy and the running of business. Procurement is large in Jamaica, and the procurement system has to be large. And the Fair Trading Commission's job in this regard is to act as an overseer to ensure that some of the activities between firms do not harm other market participants and do not harm consumers. In this sphere of procurement, government's money is at stake. It's government's money primarily that is being spent, and it's taxpayers' money. And we have a role as a competition authority to do what is best to ensure that the likelihood of any anti-competitive activities, collusion, anything that will distort the market does not take place.
And so for us to set this up properly, Mr. Miller, can you just give us two of your critical functions that enables you to execute your mandate?
Yes, ma'am. So we have the Fair Competition Act, which is a law that sets out breaches, several types of breaches, including collusive behavior, agreements that lessen competition, abuse of a dominant position. And the second function of the Fair Trading Commission, one of the other functions, is advocacy. So we are responsible for speaking with other authorities, like the Office of Public Procurement Policy, like the Integrity Commission, and as well procuring entities, because much of the procurement is being undertaken by ministries, departments, and agencies. So our role as an advocate is to guide policy, to guide persons, to give information on what we're looking for and what are the red flags in terms of competition and also in terms of procurement issues. So the advocacy role is twin, competition and procurement. And we are there as a body to collaborate with these other authorities to ensure that we have the best system that we can get for Jamaica.
It's interesting that you have stressed upon the whole topic of competition. And so I feel compelled for us to kickstart this by asking, how do competition authorities actively promote competition and support Jamaica's broader economic growth agenda?
So competition, as you said, supports Jamaica's broader economic growth. And the two primary ways is enforcement of the law. We have a law in Jamaica that says you ought not to do A, B, C. And our job is to follow the law and to encourage firms to report issues to us, as well as for us to have an eye out there so that we can foresee things that are going to happen. And the second aspect is advocacy, as I mentioned before, to talk to the market participants, to talk to everybody, to give them a heads up of what to do and what they should not be doing so that we can prevent having to go that extra mile in enforcing the law. And we all know that the court system takes a long time, So let us try and do it proactively by maintaining the conversation between the key players along the way.
In listening to the way you have brought that point across, Mr. Miller, what pops in my mind is the whole matter of collusion. Since we're talking about the issue of ethics and fair play, that implies that there might be actors who will want to contravene, and carry bad practices in how they go about meeting their bottom line. What are some of the effects that collusion has on procurement as it relates to the cost to government? And do you think collusion is an issue?
Most definitely in this sphere. And we talk a lot on our verandas and elsewhere about corruption. And we hear the word going around. And we ought to understand what it means. And it's something that is frowned upon. It's something that distorts markets and government spending and consumer welfare, just like collusion, corruption sometimes go hand in hand. But we ought to be aware of what's going on and to prevent these things because they negatively impact economic growth. It has a negative effect on consumer welfare. It causes the price of basic goods and services for consumers like ourselves to increase. You may not see the effect immediately, but over time you will see the effect. If you didn't have these issues, then the prices would not have been as high. So it's our responsibility, both procurement and competition agents, to examine the issues and to ensure that the framework is built to avoid market participants colluding and coming together to fix prices, to fix the bids, to divide markets, for example.
I believe all mature procurement systems are predicated on, competition, having efficient competition that works, competition that enables government not just to get the best price for goods or services, but also to achieve that big objective of value for money. What are the key foundations for a competition authority as it relates to procurement systems?
Right, so there are several, and over time, research people have looked at these things, not in Jamaica necessarily. It's a worldwide phenomenon. It's a discipline that is studied in most developed countries. I would say all developed countries and most developing countries, because it's so important to economic growth. For example, let's give you some statistics. Studies have shown that corruption adds 20 to 25% to actual project costs. And collusive tendering adds anywhere between 8 and 60% to competitive prices. That's a lot of money right here.
Indeed.
So we have to create these systems that in their design and their framework that can challenge and examine these things beforehand. We have to do the research. We'll continue to do the research. We cannot necessarily rely on the research done by other agencies in other jurisdictions. We have to do our own research in Jamaica as well to ensure that we are keeping abreast of what's going on, collecting data, informing policy of different types. And when I say policy, it's not just the policy for corruption, for competition, or the policy for procurement. We're talking about other types of government policies that affect business that we might not be necessarily aware of, but the issues contained in that policy may suggest or could have a gap in there for market participants to exploit. So we have to do that kind of research on other policies as well. And we have to have a deterrence mechanism. If somebody does something wrong and gets away with it, and there is no consequence, So we want to have a deterrence effect. Can we have sanctions placed on a firm that we find to have breached the law? Can they be disqualified from future procurements, for example? Can a more complete examination be had in these issues? So these are some of the things that forms the foundation. You must have a strong law. And I think we're getting there in Jamaica. You must have a deterrence mechanism. We must have enforcement capability. And nowadays in the digital world, what are we looking at? AI that's growing.
Indeed.
Online commerce, data access and integration. We need to be aware of these issues and all. And I spoke earlier about advocacy and collaboration. Keep on talking, keep persons in the loop and understanding what the disciplines are about so that we can be effective.
I'm very happy that I do know that there have been collaborative initiatives between the Office of Public Procurement Policy, the FTC, and the Public Procurement Commission. But for those who are not aware, can you speak to us a little bit more and explain how closely does the FTC work with the PPC and the Ministry of Finance to prevent anti-competitive practices during tender design and evaluation? And also, are there formal information or joint training programs in place to do all of that?
We're at a point where we have done a great amount of work together in terms of public education, in terms of sharing information and knowledge, in terms of speaking with procuring entities in focus groups. Last year, the Office of Public Procurement Policy put on the Elevate Conference, which certainly from my understanding and visually seeing there, it brought out many procuring entities, many stakeholders in different sectors to come and listen to a variety of sessions on different issues that affect public procurement. The Fair Trading Commission is one of these. And we've been working with the Office of Public Procurement and the Integrity Commission as well. At the same time, we're not at the place where we want to be. We want to do more. There's always more to learn. There's always more to do. And the responsible authorities need to come together more on some things. Institutional collaboration is one way. Have some MOU of sorts that we can do to ensure as best as possible that we keep the conversation going so that we can know what information each entity needs to do their analysis properly. And that comes to the data sharing. There's also, I think, the need for more robust reporting of this information. We tend sometimes to hold information to ourselves.
Indeed.
And among the collaborators, we need to, I think there's a space for more of that, as well as to the procuring entities. The Elevate Conference was a great conference, as I said, and I think at this stage in Jamaica's development, it should be held maybe once a year. Plus the smaller focus groups throughout the country that we did in 2024 and 2023 certainly helped a lot. So more collaboration is needed. We're not yet at that place. We've come a long way, but there's a longer way to go.
And I'm certain that the senior decision makers who will probably look at this conversation will seek to do more to strengthen what has already started, because we do have systems at the Office of Public Procurement Policy. We have launch initiatives, and we're moving in the direction of data mining and trying to ensure and to enhance our system to capture data that we think will be critical to assist you. So I'm very happy that you have explained that point the way that you have, and I suspect that this is not the end of the conversation.
I know it will not be.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the impact of digitized procurement. Jamaica is modernizing procurement through online platforms. The Government of Jamaica electronic procurement platform being one of those critical work that we have started. How does digital tendering change the FTC's ability to monitor and detect suspicious bidding patterns?
The digital tendering system was a bold step, a forward-looking step, and it moved in the direction of more data. And with more data, we're able to do more analysis. And we should take advantage of these things. We have the digital procurement, we have the enabling legislation, we have the Data Protection Act in place. We need to be at the point now where the Fair Trading Commission can be able to access that data, to analyze that data. One of our jobs at the Fair Trading Commission is extensive economic analysis in whichever area we're looking at, whichever potential breach of the law. We rely almost solely on data and evidence. And the digital procurement system gives us a lot of data nowadays that we can examine. It companies' names, the types of contracts, the value of contracts, the sector that they're in. This is information that the Fair Trading Commission uses to examine the market structure and how firms interact with each other. And our work takes us down the road of examining trends, behavioral trends. They're saying, there are too many coincidences. Why are the same three firms always bidding on this type of contract? And why is it that On one occasion, company A always wins for a certain kind of product, and company B always bids second or third. And this is the kind of data that we have to be using, or we want to be using, to look to see where that sector is going, for example. With more data come the need for more tools. And we're now gone to the artificial intelligence world. In other jurisdictions, for example, competition authorities have developed AI tools to look at those trends, to raise those red flags, not only in procurement, but in other kinds of anti-competitive or potential anti-competitive behavior. So it's an expanding area with more data. Yes, we have more information, but we have to be able to use that data in a structured format. And we at the Fair Trading Commission, we desire to have data in a certain kind of form, but I'm sure we can work with the OPPP to look at what our needs are so that we can be more proactive in examining this kind of information to limit the likelihood of procurement issues later on down the road.
The impact in listening to how you just so eloquently represented that particular issue, the impact to the quality of bids and whether we'll be able to get to have quality contract implementation is enormous. And so I'd want us to not again, but also re-examining the whole matter of bid rigging in a small economy such as ours. We're small in terms of geographic size. We're basically connected, very connected in through familial relationships and school relationships and all of that. Relatively small markets can make procurement more vulnerable to collusion. That has already been established through research. What types of bid rigging behaviors should be scrutinized by competition authorities? And what warning signs should procurement officials be particularly alert to?
So one of the things that we look at, we know that it's a small economy. We know there are a few market participants in a particular sector. So we know these things. One of the things we look out for is repeated interventions, repeated interactions between those few players. And that's why examining the data is huge for us, because in these kinds of scenarios, they can share information, confidential information. They can do what we call market division, decide, for example, hey, company A, you're going to take the county of Surrey. Company B, you're going to take Cornwall. You can divide that market and focus. So those firms that are privy to that information that come together can distort the market, can raise prices and make higher profits than under normal circumstances. They can engage in bid rotation. For example, company A wins a bid this month, the next time around company B, the next time around company C. And then the underbelly of this is when company A wins, company C is a subcontractor of sort. So yes, we are aware of these kinds of situations. What do? We have to examine them and proactively helps so that we can put guidelines or systems in place to limit the likelihood of doing it. And there are several red flags. There are several red flags that have been established that gives us a heads up as to when or the likelihood of this kind of collusive behavior taking place. Some of the red flags I've made a note. Similar bidding patterns, for example, regular or unexplained bid withdrawals, coordinated bid content or language, limited variation in bid prices. So we're trained to look out for some of these things that other authorities may not be so well trained. But again, comes back to training and sharing information. We can share information and learn more about other authorities, when other authorities learn more about us, procuring entities also, so that they have an idea when a red flag, to identify one of these red flags and can bring it to us, who will examine deeper on that situation. Collusion is big, especially in small economies.
And collaboration is even bigger because you're opening the eyes of those, not much myself, but those who will be listening, to realize that there has to really be not just a collaboration, but an intimate working between the FTC, Public Procurement Commission
Right.
and the
Integrity.
Office of Public Procurement
Right,
Policy.
right.
One really now must consider capacity to do what you're doing. Does the FCC have the tools, the data access, and investigative powers it needs to detect collusion in public procurement markets, especially in sectors like construction, pharmaceuticals, and public infrastructure? Huge, powerful markets in our country.
We have tools.
Okay.
We have a strong legislation in place. We have technical expertise, a skill set in our office. Is it enough? Maybe not, depending on the scope that you're looking at.
Yes.
And it's our responsibility to build that into better systems, to be stronger with the tools that we're using. You don't want to be using a screwdriver when you should be using a hammer.
Indeed, indeed.
And you have to know how to use that hammer and when to use it. We need to develop ourselves more as we go along. It's always better to be able to do more with the resources that we have as well. And competition and procurement advocacy, as I said, spreading the word more helps us. We have more to do in the terms of the digital divide, in terms of knowledge of how to explore the data using AI tools. But the basis for the tools are there. The basic tools are there. It's now up to us, the core authorities, to develop ourselves more, to get additional tools. And we're not talking about reinventing the wheel. These tools exist in other jurisdictions. And in our world of competition law, we're always willing to help each other and to share information across borders that will help authorities. And sometimes we talk about limited resources, but again, we're not reinventing the wheel. So the cost of doing some of these things are not restrictive.
So then, could you just describe the conditions that facilitate collusion in public procurement?
Small economy again. You're going to have limited number of players. And that affects the procurement system. That is one way. And sometimes you have to look at the size of the market. Another condition to look at barriers to entry. Barriers to entry is a serious limitation, or it can be a serious limitation to, in particular, smaller and medium-sized enterprises for coming into a procurement space. And one of the critical areas that we look at, another is in all investigations, is let us try and limit the barriers to entry. Yeah, there are going to be these three big firms all the time. How can you make a smaller size firm, that next level firm, be able to participate in that procurement? And that's one of the things that we look on from a policy perspective, so as to develop MSMEs in particular, and to make the system more level playing field in the system. And SMEs and MSMEs deserve that kind of space in the Jamaican environment. They deserve to be able to participate. Studies have shown that the MSMEs are critical to driving economic growth.
Indeed.
So government, and this government has been doing it, successive governments have been doing it for decades, encouraging MSME participation in procurement by, for example, doing carve-outs of certain types, doing lotting and contract segmentation, splitting up contracts into smaller amounts that are more affordable, providing financing and funding to the SMEs, so that not only the established large companies can participate in certain kinds of contracts, but the smaller. And the more entities involved in the procurement makes it more competitive and the less likelihood to collusive tendering.
You have answered in a great degree what the next question that I had in the back of my mind, which is how does the FTC ensure that procurement rules help SME participation while maintaining healthy competition? Because I suspect that those who will be looking at what we're discussing, listening to what we're discussing this morning, especially from that sector, will be keen. It will be keen to see whether there's hope for them, really. So I would love if you could reiterate,
The Fair Trading Commission is an agency of the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. That's our parent ministry, and our parent ministry has 20 agencies under it. And within the ministry, there's an MSME unit that particularly focuses on developing small-sized businesses and helping them to grow in different areas, including financing, in terms of including also finding markets for their products. And one of the responsibilities of the MSME unit of the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce is developing policies that can facilitate the growth of MSMEs. The Fair Trading Commission routinely reviews these policies to ensure that they abide by the competition law, because you don't want it to be in breach of the law. You don't want to give away too much. But at the same time, our job is to point out where the policy can encourage, from a competition law perspective, from a procurement perspective, to limit the likelihood of abuse of dominance by a large firm. So our job right there is to examine the policy, to raise that red flag from the policy level before it is implemented, so that our ministry can go deeper to getting an opportunity to give the small business a chance.
Okay, so there will be, I suspect there will be those who will be, critiquing all that you have said and say, okay, it sounds, and those will say, it sounds good. There's hope, but it's understood that competition in strategic or dominated sectors, and that some procurement heavy markets in Jamaica, such as road works, telecom infrastructure, or utility-related services, have only a handful of major suppliers.
Right.
And that would now lead someone to say, how does the FTC maintain competitive pressure in those sectors where entry is structurally limited?
Right, and we know that already. We know that in some sectors, and you spoke about them, infrastructural works, utility-related things, we know that there will be a few market participants. We know that it's very unlikely a small to medium-sized firm will be able to participate. So we know these things. So we have to plan for these things. We have to continue the discussions between the authorities that have oversight. We have to continue the discussions and the training of procuring entities to what to look out for. We have to examine the barriers to entry in these sectors. For example, we have done the Fair Trading Commission has done a ton load of work in the utility sector, telecom sector, from liberalization in 1999 or thereabouts. And we're constantly working with the Office of Utilities Regulation to limit the barriers to entry, to ensure that the market remains as competitive as is possible. So that is our work, and that's what we have to do. It's not perfect, but I think the collaboration between ourselves and the Office of Utilities Regulation, where the utilities are concerned, it's a strong collaboration that works. Right now we're doing an extensive study on the wholesale market for broadband services and for telecom services in Jamaica. A study that has not been done in almost 20 years. And this study is set out to look at the structure of the market and where the telecom sector wants to go and where it is going, and to kind of keep the market participants within a space that limits the likelihood of collusion or breaching procurement rules or competition law rules. So that's the work that we have to do, and that's our job.
You did mention earlier the relevance / importance of legislation to enable you to carry out your mandate. And one would want to just delve a little bit more into that. Are there legislative or policy updates the FTC believes Jamaica needs, such as stronger cartel enforcement powers or explicit procurement competition guidelines to better safeguard competition in the public procurement, in public procurement over the next decade? So looking down the road, we know that our legislation has to grow to keep abreast and apace with what is happening and the new challenges that presents themselves. So give us a view of what it looks like just now and how flexible is that legislation to meet the needs and the challenges that occur sometimes.
Thank you very much for that issue and for raising that issue. And as I said earlier, we are at a place where we have come a long way, but we have some ways to go, and have looked at other jurisdictions and what they are doing to properly create that framework for Jamaica. And it's not a Fair Trading Commission alone, and the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce together alone will do that. It's joined up government, as they call it. So we've moved from a space where we're purely reactive to procurement, and with the data that we have now, the procurement systems in place now, digital procurement systems, we can be more proactive, and that's where we need to go. Using AI tools, I mentioned that earlier on, data access rights, sophisticated analytical tools, cybersecurity risks, having explicit procurement competition guidelines. And in terms of the legal framework, other jurisdictions have gone to leniency programs, whistleblowing legislation, where a person in a firm can quietly go to the authority and say, hey, something is happening in my firm that doesn't sound or feel right, looks like collusion, you know. And I think having that kind of legislative framework will help our procurement system. Of course, you need strong fines and penalties. And there's a system in our jurisdiction with our courts to administer fines. I think that needs to be explored a little bit further. So from the legislative point of view, to properly or better administer the system going down the road, 10 years time, or not even as long as 10 years time, that certainly will help to have these legislative powers and the data tools as well developed, the software as well as the skill set to use those tools so that we can be more proactive in what we're doing.
Mr. Miller, I must say that I've learned quite a bit here, and I know that those who will be looking at this will also learn a lot. And I can't thank you enough for partnering with us to make this particular occasion possible. But I must ask you, I don't know how you're going to do it to separate the man from his profession. But looking at what you're doing and looking at where you're at and looking down the road, do you see much hope? Do you think we'll be able to, if we can't at least slay that collusion beast, but can we at least be able to properly manage it and cage it, and to see the strides that Jamaica has made already on the whole matter of ethics and fair play and fair trade and fair play in national affairs? Do you see much hope for us? Do you think that we can rest assured that if we continue at the pace that we are currently at just now, and all the accomplishments over time, that we can get to that point where we can beat our chest and say we can be ranked among those mature systems?
We're on the way. We're definitely on the way. It's not something that we're going to achieve overnight. It takes time. At the same time, we don't want to take too much time to do it. The foundation, a strong foundation of professionalism, of transparency, of integrity has been built and is being built as we go along through primarily the Ministry of Finance's Office of Public Procurement Policy. On this, 25 years ago, I would say we were a long way from where we are. Yes, the years have passed, but there's more than hope. It's being done. It's being done now, and we together have to advocate policymakers to do more, because we pretty much know what more we need to do. Jamaica has there's always said, some of the brightest people around, and our skill set is unmatched. So we can apply it here, and we can do it and get it done in a timely manner. There is much more strength and development in our government policy and legislative framework. There's a lot of reliance on international expertise that we can tap into to finalize certain policies and laws. So I think we will get it done, and we will get it done in short order. It's very important that we do, and our government is aware, and much work is being done. And this podcast is another example of where we're going with the conversation to make it more accessible by persons, the general public, and stakeholders in particular. This is a very important topic, as I said. It has implications directly and indirectly to consumers and to government spending, and we must do it.
David Thomas from the Office of Public Procurement Policy. Thank you, Mr. David Miller.
Thank you very much
for being here with us today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and all the best.
Thank you.